Great Scott! Great Scott! Great Scott!
Hello everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Great Scott. I'm Scotty V, and thanks for watching. Lois Lane, whether she's a girlfriend, a rival, a wife, or just a really good friend and great journalistic partner, she's always been an integral part of our last Son of Krypton's life. Since the first issue of Action #1, where Lois Lane was supposedly based on the wife of Jerry Siegel, we saw that she was feisty. She was oftentimes portrayed as nasty toward Clark, but always out for the story and always willing to go as far as she had to go to get it. That has continued through the ages, through the Golden Age, the Silver Age, through the Modern Age, and into today. And we have so many different variations to look at when we're talking about Lois, whether it's Dean Cain's Terry Hatcher as Lois Lane, whether it's George Reeves, Phyllis Coates at first, and then Noel Neill after that, whether she's Erica Durance on Smallville, who, by the way, was actually always Lois Lane, whereas there's still an argument going on about whether Tom Welling was ever actually Superman or if he should only be considered Clark Kent. There's no argument like that with Erica Durance because she was Lois Lane from the beginning. Whether it's a Superman Returns Lois Lane, whom many people say didn't have enough chemistry or didn't have enough acting skills or didn't really fit the role. But in the immortal words of Frank Langella, Lois Lane is as much a part to Superman as is truth, justice, and all that other stuff. Recently, I've been asked by several fans if I thought that Lois seemed a little out of character in this new Man of Steel trailer. Now, my first answer to that, of course, is it's just a trailer. We're only seeing a snippet, an idea, a generalization of what this movie might entail. And from the new trailer, as I talked about last week, I see a lot of great things that I'm very stoked about, very positive about. It looks action-packed, of course, but it also looks like it has a ton of emotion, story, plot, an explanation of Krypton that we've never seen before. I love so many things. And one of the things that I really love about the trailer is that there has been question as to why Lois hasn't been included in the other trailers, other than just a fleeting glimpse or holding Superman's hand. I like that Lois's part in all of this is really exemplified in the new trailer. We see her digging through caves or ice sculptures or possibly the fortress or somewhere else where supposedly the Man of Steel has been. She's tracking him. She also gives a voiceover where she's narrating. There's a few things going on there, a few ideas that I have. One of my speculations was, is it possible that Lois Lane is going to be kind of like a narrator throughout this film? Would that be acceptable? For me, I don't know that I want a constant narrator throughout the entire film, but maybe 2 or 3 times. And I've read many a comic book where Lois or Clark or even Perry and sometimes Jimmy are writing a story. And we don't find out that the narrator of the comic book is the writer of one of these stories, Clark, Lois, Jimmy, or Perry, until the last page, until we find out what it is that's personal about this particular story to them. And throughout the story, not on every page, but on certain pages, there's a little block in a different color from the other dialogue that is the writer writing. Or when you're reading a story, it seems like the narrator narrating, and then turns out to be a story that Lois Lane or Clark or somebody is writing, which I could see happening in this movie, and I could see myself kind of liking that. And by the voiceover of Amy Adams through this new trailer, I get the impression that that's kind of the idea they might have been going for. But on the other hand, she could be having a simple conversation with her sister, her mother, Perry, Jimmy, or Jenny, if that's what it ends up being. So it could be Perry saying, "Go out and find this guy. What do I pay you for?" And her saying, "How do you find a guy who?" Or it could be her writing a story that we're going to see printed at the end of the movie. So I finally found Superman. Whatever, but that would be really cool. But the other thing that I have had brought up to me over the last week or so since the trailer was released, a week and a half, whatever it is that it almost seems like this Lois is kind of stretching for a story, kind of chasing down what seems to be more like tabloid fodder, Bigfoot type stories than it does a world-class reporter of someone's intelligence that Lois Lane is always supposed to have. And my explanation for that is that, again, it's a trailer. We don't know exactly what the context is of this. My thought is how perfect it would be if at some point earlier in this Lois's life, this guardian angel that she calls him saved her, or saved someone important to her, or saved someone that she knew near to her, and she saw him or saw a glimpse of him. Also, if Superman was in the world and was going out performing super feats, even if he sped away before anybody could get solid evidence or a picture, there would be thousands, millions of people who had experienced this Superman saving their lives. So it really wouldn't be a couple of guys in the woods going, "Oh, we saw Bigfoot," as they're swilling beer and standing with their raccoon traps. This would be different. This would be world over. People would be recording this, and just nobody would have an actual picture of the man, or a story with the man, or knowledge of the man firsthand. But it would be clearly evident within a certain amount of time, if he kept doing these things, that it was happening and that it was real, and not like Bat Boy found in a cave. So that's one explanation. The other being that he saved her at some point, and that's what gives her the obsession at finding him. And the other is this could be the breaking, the story that really breaks her career. And I've heard the argument, well, Lois has always been a world-class reporter at the top of her game, but that's not necessarily true. At some point in anybody's career, they are not at the top of their game. Even if they reach Tom Cruise levels of movie stardom, at some point they were, the guy in the frat house that barely had a part, the guy sliding in on his socks that finally made his career, and he started to become a superstar at that point. At some point they come across something that changes things, and I could see being the first person to actually speak with and track down the first alien ever recorded to visit the planet would be a pretty big deal. I don't think that this tarnishes her character at all, although we haven't seen the movie yet. If it turns out that she's some obsessed fan woman that is chasing this guy down and is stalking him, then it will be a little different than what I expect. But what I expect, based on what I have seen, is a very strong Lois, a smart Lois. I mean, did you see her sitting at the table at the end? She was snarky. She was ready. She had comments. She was perfectly confident. She wasn't intimidated in the least sitting in this room with him. Now, maybe this comes later after she's held his hand and she's befriended him, and maybe they're just playing this up for the cameras and for the military. But it looks to me to be their first conversation in front of all these people, and she's just as confident as he is. I love the chemistry. It's palpable. There's an energy there that is fantastic. And, Lois Lane is so important to the story, and I think that oftentimes in many Superman retellings, the women in the story are really downplayed. Martha, Lara, Lois at times. And I really hope that both Martha and Lara get their own portion of the story, to where we feel that they're really important and integral to what is going on. And Lois, who obviously in many different mediums, Smallville for one, has been huge and has been explored in a great way. I also like the way she was explored in Lois and Clark, even though it was canceled much sooner in a different kind of flavor than Smallville. We really found out who these people were, whereas a lot of times in a movie, when you only have 2 hours, it's really about the action and the plot, and let's get from point A to point B as quickly as we can, with, some story points and some character development in there. And I'm really hoping, with at least 3 main influences on Superman's growing life, being women, that they are explored thoroughly in terms of story and in terms of their importance to the character. Less so than Lois, I have seen Martha and Lara be explored very little. Lois oftentimes is very integral to the plot. Sometimes she's a damsel in distress. Sometimes she's just a kind of a pivot point for the plot to move around. I'm really hoping to see some great stuff from the women in this movie. and particularly Lois, who probably is the most integral and most important. And from the looks of this trailer, I think we're going to get just that. She's not just going to be Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, but she's going to be an integral part of his life, an integral part of him being shown to the world, and an integral part of his creation and his ongoing fight for truth, justice, and the American way. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and remember, always look up in the sky.